From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1, widens window of opportunity.
You go in there and drain the swamp. There have been something like 15,000 tax changes since that last tax reform. So you go in there, clean those out, use the money to hold down the rates and encourage progressivity. And when they did that in the first couple of years out of the box, we created something like 6 million new jobs. Nobody can say they're all due to tax reform, but it sure helped to set the climate, and I think it can do so again.
America's tax code, last overhauled in 1986, 28 years ago, is holding back our economy. Between now and August of 2015, there is a window of opportunity for a bipartisan tax reform. So says Democrat Ron Wyden, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, who in a recent Politico newspaper column challenged House Speaker John Boehner, a Republican, to join him in crafting comprehensive tax legislation. Quote, "My door is wide open, and there is plenty of work to be done on a bipartisan basis." Unquote. The centerpiece of Wyden's tax reform proposal is lowering the U.S. corporate tax rate from 35% to 24% in order to make America more competitive with foreign countries. In recent months, a spate of U.S. firms have relocated operations overseas through what are known as, quote-unquote, inversions to take advantage of lower foreign taxes. Wyden's overture to Boehner stems from an August column by the Speaker urging President Obama to get in the act. Quote, "President Obama must get his allies on Capitol Hill to do their job. Senate Democrats, including Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden, pay lip service to tax reform, but they have utterly failed to act. The president, the leader of his party, must actually lead it." Unquote.
Question, is momentum for tax reform building? Pat Buchanan.
It is building, and Wyden's a good man, and it is a great idea and ought to be done. But I don't think it's very hopeful, John, for the reason that there's real sort of anti-business, anti-Wall Street sentiment very much in the Democratic Party, in the House and in the Senate. And it'd be very hard to get them together on this, so I don't think it's going to come. I was with Ronald Reagan in '86. I can remember on a plane to Tokyo Economic Summit when we got word that Packwood and others had gotten together, I think Bradley, and they were going to cut the top individual tax rate from 50 to 28%, and I said go with it. This idea of simplification and reduce rates is a great idea. Actually, John, in the last analysis, you ought to do away with the income tax because corporations are the institutions that create jobs, and why do you take away 35 or 40% of the seed corn of the American economy?
We're going to get to that in a minute. Eleanor.
I do think there is an opportunity here. I think Wyden is a wily legislator, a talented legislator, and he's worked across the aisle in a number of areas. He's put forward a tax reform plan in the past, as you pointed out, and you have some Republicans, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, unfortunately he's retiring, but Dave Camp has called the tax system riddled with what he calls lobbyist loopholes. And I think the aversion to how Wall Street operates in this country actually helps the cause of tax reform because people want to see those loopholes stripped. And regardless of which party wins the Senate in November, neither party will have a commanding majority. They'll either be just a little over 50 or a little below 50, which is, in a way, an opportune time to pursue tax reform together. They'll probably start with something on inversions in the lame duck session after the election because people are really disgusted by the notion of Burger King taking their operations overseas.
That's an inversion.
Inversion.
A
what
company
I call
taking
aversions.
taking its operation overseas.
Although Burger King denies that there's an inversion because they're not moving their office, their headquarters, or their actual operations.
They're merging. You don't have to move your operations. You merge it with a foreign company, and because so many foreign countries have much lower corporate tax rates, you then get taxed at the level of the foreign company, whereas American law requires you to tax all of your income all around the world at a much higher rate. So it makes perfect sense, in a business sense, for the companies to do this.
Who's done it?
Oh, many companies.
Burger King.
Burger King is one. 49 companies have done it just in the last couple of years.
Walgreens.
Walgreens
yes,
backed away after they got so much negative publicity.
Pfizer tried to do it. Pfizer tried to do it with AstraZeneca in Great Britain, and there was a firestorm over it, John. But I can understand why they do it. But it gets into the whole question of economic patriotism and economic treason, if you will. Is it treasonous for companies to get up and leave the country that nurtured them to get lower tax rates and, you know, make money overseas and leave their American workers behind? Oh, these have got a tremendous number of issues.
Well, we do need tax reform. There's no question about it.
Right.
People on both sides. However, the problem is actually implementing it because everybody's got their own sacred cows. You know, the old a poem about don't tax you, don't tax me, tax that guy behind that tree. That's still true. And, you know, the lame duck session is actually a good time to do it because that's when you've got people who are going out, got less to lose, and the next Congress hasn't taken over yet.
How many American companies have inverted?
I think more than 49.
49.
They're all over the place now, John. They're just moving abroad, move their headquarters over there.
I didn't know that Walgreens had reconsidered.
Yes, well, because there's a lot of public pressure on these companies.
From where?
Well, from the public, from the press. And
why?
Why?
Economic treason, John.
Exactly what Pat is
Because
saying.
they want tax revenue here.
Yes, of course they want tax revenue here, but the companies, of course, are saying, what are we talking about? That we have a very high tax rate compared to the rest of the world.
Well, if they come back here, then they would probably increase their prices back here in order to accommodate the tax burden they carry here.
Well,
whereas if they go overseas and have a lesser tax burden, they will reduce their prices and be more competitive.
Well,
what about that?
Well, there's one other option that they have. Instead of reducing their prices, they increase their profits. I don't know why that's a possibility they might think about.
Right, and they don't
have you thought about
it? Wherever I can.
Can you invert? Have you inverted?
John, look at
Could you invert?
No.
John, do you move? You live in Florida, not D.C., right? What's your residence? People do it there. Why do people put their money in the Caymans? Why do they put their money in Switzerland, in Swiss bank accounts? Everybody, they go from one state to another.
So everybody is playing the system, gaming the system, and it's all legal. That's why Congress has to step in and make sure that this stuff doesn't continue.
It's not going to get. You get the deal.
They'll start.
You got a corporate tax rate for
inversions.
25%. Ireland and these guys. I think Ireland's 12%, isn't it?
Yes, so many of the international tax rates are so far below the United States that it is
ours is the highest.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, they're much lower than the United States. I thought that's what I said.
Right.
But it is absolutely going to be a disaster for the United States if more and more of these companies move their headquarters abroad, but the tax rates are so much lower.
Which is why it's likely that Congress might actually act in December when they come back after the election.
Is Obama going to get behind this?
I think if you could get everybody together,
he's already promised tax reform.
Would this be redemptive of Obama?
Listen,
it helps.
It would help, would it not?
John,
it works.
At this stage, it'll never get through the Congress. It won't get through the House. The Republicans are not going to pass it.
There's very hostile forces to really reducing rates on corporations in the Hill, and a lot of corporations are going to fight for protect their little loopholes in the law. What you need is Reagan. If you had Reagan was the last guy to do it.
What year?
Right.
1986.
That's correct.
Yeah.
1986. What happened?
Well, we had the Blue Dogs with us, and we had a Republican Senate, as I recall. We lost it that year after we passed the tax bill.
And Reagan got in behind it, and he pushed it forward.
I was on the plane, and I heard they said we're going to go to 28%, and I said I don't care what the terms are, take it.
And he did take it.
He grabbed it.
He grabbed it and he got it through Congress.
He took the rates all the way from 70% to 28%.
Exit question on a political probability scale, 0 to 10. What is the likelihood that there will be major tax reform next year? 0 to 10. Pat Buchanan.
I think it's only 3 to 4.
Eleanor.
I give it 5 or 6 or even 7 in the lame duck only corporate tax reform. I think individual tax reform is probably a bridge too far for this Congress, for the coming Congress.
I'll go down the middle, 50-50. Which is better than now.
Yeah, I think Eleanor is right. The corporate tax reform is a much more likely outcome than total tax reform. But that in itself would be a huge step forward.
What's the probability, Mort?
I'd say it's about 49.4%.
Not 50-50.
I don't want to go that far.
Always the pessimist.
But I'm not that
Always
far.
the pessimist, Mort.
He got it right. Clarence got it right. The answer is 50-50. Don't forget the McLaughlin Group has its own website, and you can watch this program and earlier programs on the web at any time from anywhere in the world at McLaughlin.com. Could anything be simpler? McLaughlin.com or more joyous? Issue 2, Banking on the BRICS.
The 6th annual summit of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, plus South Africa, was held at the lush Brazilian beachside resort town of Fortaleza. The BRICS have a challenging mission to decouple themselves from the post-World War II international monetary order forged at the New Hampshire Bretton Woods United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference of July 1944. The BRICS declared they would establish an alternative to the World Bank to be called the New Development Bank, based in Shanghai, China. The bank will have a $50 billion loan portfolio, $10 billion from each BRIC member. First, however, the legislatures of BRIC states must approve and fund the new bank. China will rubber stamp the deal, and the BRICS will fund a $100 billion contingent reserve account to replace reliance on the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. Now get this irony. 4 years ago, 4 of the 5 BRICS received a combined $6.105 billion in foreign aid from the United States alone.
Question: why are the BRICS creating their own international monetary instruments parallel to the World Bank and the IMF? Eleanor?
Each of these economies, they're big economies, and they're coming of age at a time when the American economy is no longer the colossus on the world stage. And they're buying influence around the world. China really is the big dog here because they've got the money, they want the resources, and you look at some of the projects they have in Latin America and in Africa, and you can see where they don't have all the rules that the IMF has and the other international lending authorities have, and they don't make people worry about the environment or impacts on the workforce, and so people think they're getting a great deal. I think there's going to be a lot of fallout because the Chinese in particular go in, they don't hire local people, they bring in their own workforces, but they do circumvent the bureaucracy of the existing lending agencies, which have been around a long time and are very wary of a lot of these new projects.
There's a lot of nonsense here. Look, China and India are colliding strategically over the Indian Ocean and border areas China took. What does Russia have in common with South Africa? All they are is they're the non-Western countries. We're the G7. 4 Europeans, Canada, U.S., Japan. They want to be the non-U.S. countries. This is sort of something that was created, John. I don't think there's any commonality to them economically. I don't think they're any threat whatsoever. I think they just want to say, we are not the West, and we are the alternative to the West, and they are not.
The World Bank and the IMF dominate.
Eleanor's right. China is the big dog.
They dominate Europe, and they dominate the United States.
And Japan.
And the BRICS justifiably and predictably have come to their senses and decided that they're going to do this. Is that fair or unfair?
That's exactly right. They want to be independent. They want to be able to make their own decisions. They're going to focus a lot of their resources on infrastructure in their own countries, and this is where they want to have their own, shall we say, approval methods, okay? They don't want to go through the rules and regulations of the World Bank, and they're going to have a control of enough money, and they're going to focus on their own development, and they'll benefit from it. It makes perfect sense.
I think they do have something in common, though, money, and that's and the profit motive here. This is a new stage for the world economy, I think, because remember the IMF, World Bank were established after World War II, primarily to rebuild Europe. That phase is long. We're long past that now. These countries that we helped to develop in the past half century are now included in the new BRICS nations, and they do want that kind of freedom from
Russia doesn't give any foreign aid. The Chinese are all over Africa. They're bleeding these countries of their resources. The Chinese are the big players.
China's not doing aid.
John, what is South Africa doing, I mean, as a country and an economy, doing in any major collection of countries, other than it provides the S at the end of BRICS?
It's providing window dressing for what China is doing. It's basically China and a lot of other countries that cover it, make it look like a benign international effort when it's really
China's not giving aid. China's investing. They're reaping billions out of Africa, and like Eleanor said, they're not creating that many local jobs and local development.
I got to ask Mort the key question here.